Alright, in this particular video, we are going to start off by rescaling each of our images before we convert them or make selections out of them. So to do that, let's get started by doing it one layer at a time. It's important that we do this step also so we know how things will kind of fit inside of our canvas. Assuming that you've worked through this project effectively at this point, you should be working through it with your sketches on hand of your concept, so you know the end result of what you want to get. So I'm going to start off by working through these layers one by one, scaling them down. Now the good news is they're all converted to smart objects, so that means that they're safe to scale so that they don't ruin the original image, which means I can scale them over and over again without any problems. Normally in Photoshop, when you scale a photographic or pixel-based image, the pixel data gets rewritten every single time, and it starts to downgrade and remove the resolution from the pixels. Where it adds new pixels where there weren't any. So when you scale up a photo, you don't actually add more detail to your photograph when you scale it up if there's none there. Photoshop does its best to try to figure out where details need to be, and it just blows up the image and the pixels, and so it starts looking really blurry and lack of detail shows up real fast. So instead of that, we want to make sure that it's protected with our smart object, and we're also going to go ahead and scale at this point. So let's go ahead and scale. So to start scaling, you're going to use Command T based on the layer you're working on. So I'm going to hit Command T. There we go. And after it activates the selection, you should notice that your whole layer is now selected by showing this cross through. Now this only shows on smart object layers, by the way. But this indicates the overall, this cross through indicates where it reaches to the far corners of your image. Now it's a big image because it's bigger than my canvas, which means that my photograph, my original photograph, is actually, it has a high resolution that is larger than my original canvases, or the canvases that I'm using right now. And that's a great thing when you bring in photographs and they're actually bigger than your canvas that you're working on, because then you can actually scale them a little bit more without losing or worrying about qualitative issues. So I'm going to scale this down just a little bit, and to do it, I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to come up here to my tool options, and I'm going to lock together width and height up here at the top by clicking on this chain link icon between them. That will lock these two number values together, and that way when I change one, the other changes automatically with it. So to change them or to scale it, I can also just click on screen to scale in. So I'm going to move my mouse over a corner point that I can see. If you can't see your corner points, you can always use Command minus or Control minus and click and hold down Control and hit the minus key on your keyboard a couple times till you see your other corners around your image. So I zoomed out just enough to see a couple of them. So I'm going to click on this corner and drag in. Notice as you drag in that these two values for W for width and H for height stay the same. That means that you're not distorting the pixels in the original image. And again, I can drag it whichever way I want right now, and nothing changes. Nothing breaks apart, and I don't have a distorted image. But I'm going to squeeze this together just a little bit, because what I want, my resulting image, is that I want my clouds to kind of fit within my background a little bit better. Now I can shrink this down if I want to be just the width of the canvas. But I know that from my design that I want to use for this, I want the sky to be about 2/3 of the visual area of the design area. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to rescale this to about 66.39% of its original size. So as I'm dragging it, notice those values change as I go. So that's probably fine, somewhere in there. Around 63% is pretty good. You can also type the value over this and hit return, and it'll work that way too. Once you have it scaled, then you can hit return on your keyboard to lock it in and turn off transform. All right, that's one down. So let's go ahead and turn that layer off now that we're done with it. Now I'm going to move on to my trees and do the same thing. Command T turns on transform, don't forget, or Control T. You can also access transform from the edit menu by going to edit and going down to transform and then go to scale. Now again, I'm going to have to zoom out because this is a very big image. Look how big this is. Much larger than my little canvas. And again, I'm going to click and drag. Before I drag in, I got to remember to change and lock this together. Watch what happens when I don't lock it together and I grab a corner. Notice this, that now I can free transform it however I want to, but the problem is that it distorts the image the more I do that. And there's nothing more awful looking when working with photographs than to get a very badly distorted looking image like this, right? So, and you want to keep it normal looking, so don't distort it, don't skew it where possible. So again, that comes into play with making sure that your numbers for width and height match. So I'm just going to put these both at 90 so that they both match, and then I'm going to lock them together right here. And now I can safely click on a corner and drag however I want to make them scale accordingly. A good trick to know is that if you click on a corner to start clicking and dragging and then hold down your Alt Option key on the keyboard, it will shrink towards the center of the image that you're on or the layer you're on. Now I'm going to shrink these trees down to where this main big tree fits inside of my window or inside of my canvas. So it should reach from edge to edge. And that's as small as I want to make it. And that's about 42, almost 43% of its original size. So I'll hit return on that one. Let me turn that off. I'm going to also move my water around. And I don't really want to rescale my water for now. So I'm going to just turn that layer off. I'm going to go to my rocks. And my rock image is probably fine. It's already a small image, so I can't scale it up. Remember, scaling on photographs is a bad idea because, again, that creates interpolation problems inside of Photoshop. Scaling down, you get by with a lot more. But the size is good for what we're going to do, so we'll leave it like this for now. If we have to change it later, that's okay. Last one to change is our person. So we'll do Command T again, and I'm going to lock together my width and height. And then I'm going to drag him down. And I'm probably going to make him about this big for now, which is about 54% of its original size. And then hit return. All right. And then I'm going to turn all my other layers back on. And we're pretty much good to get started on the final part of the work here. So we've rescaled everything, and so now we're ready to start cutting out and making selections on our work. And that's where we'll pick up with the next video.